Hey everybody, it's Brian Goulet here of GouletPens.com, and it's episode number 209 of Goulet Q&A. We just keep on rolling with these things. I'm going to be doing something different next week. I'm going to be traveling, so I will not be able to shoot a normal Q&A, but I did a recording, a Goulet guest Skype interview with Christine McAllister, who just released a book called The Income Replacement Formula. She is a entrepreneur who started multiple businesses, has a consultancy, helping other entrepreneurs, doing some coaching and stuff like that, and has done some pretty interesting things. And she wrote her entire book with a fountain pen, Edison Nouveau Premier Sea Glass. So I linked up with her through her dad when I went to Atlanta a few weeks ago. Just really cool story. So you can check out her stuff. She's got it on sale through Amazon right now. In Kindle version, and then you can get the hardcover, the paperback here soon, I think, really soon. So I'm gonna have her on Friday next week, so that will be in place of the normal Q&A. So just kind of want to let you know, and then after that, I don't think I'm traveling for a little bit, so we'll be kind of back in the groove for some time. For this week, let's see here, I turned 34 on Monday, which for me, I'm not like a huge birthday person, but I guess I'm getting to the age, especially where it's kind of like another birthday. All right, cool. But I actually really enjoy getting older. I enjoy getting wiser, having more life experience. I actually can't wait to go gray. I know that sounds really weird, but like the whole salt and pepper thing, I dig that. My dad went like gray very early when I was a kid. So like I grew up with my dad having like the silver fox look, and I've always found that appealing. So I'm actually really excited to kind of reach my latter years because I feel like you earn that, you know what I mean? But anyway, I'm not afraid of that at all. So I'm like, cool, another birthday, awesome. Felt really cared for. My team, like, media team, like made me a card. That was really cool. And I got a couple other cards from various members. So we here on the Goulet team, we definitely look out for each other and make them feel cared for, especially on birthdays and whatnot. But that was pretty cool. And then on Thursday, which will have already happened by the time this publishes, but has yet to happen because I'm recording this on Wednesday, we're actually going to a Richmond Top Workplaces, ceremony, event, dinner, whatever you want to call it, with us and our whole leadership team. So that we can find out what our ranking was. So basically it's our little local city and top workplaces, and it's all based on like the size of your company and whatnot. But for the small business category, for us, we made the list. So that's pretty exciting, especially our first year doing it. That's pretty cool. So, we had like apply and our whole team had to take a survey, and they analyzed like all the benefits and all the everything, how we run the company and all that kind of stuff. And with some variety of factors that are not exactly known to us, they decide, where we kind of stack up based on the rest of the city and based on all the people in the country that kind of participate in the top workplaces thing. So I don't know, it'll be interesting to see. So we'll probably have something newsworthy to share, hopefully, if it all goes well. But that's what we'll be doing on Thursday. And then let's see here, what else? Product-wise, we've had a little bit of expansion in our product line of broad nibs. I know a lot of you have been getting more excited about broad nibs lately. So we're trying to get the Faber-Castell looms in. We basically cleared them out of broads and waiting for more to come back in. So haven't gotten restocked on those yet, I don't think. But I could be wrong about that. But we did get some Vanishing Points and Pilot Custom 74s in broad as well. So, just keep asking, and we'll keep expanding our broad selection. That would be exciting. Rachel will be thrilled to see more broads kind of coming back into favor. The Stipula Etruria Magma, which is the follow-up to the Rainbow, which came out last year. Similar kind of pattern to it, but the Magma, Drew and I talked about that in Right Time last week. That one is going to be coming out soon, I think within the next week, so be on the lookout for that. That's going to be a pretty cool pen. I love that Etruria size of pen. A couple new Visconti pens, the Il Magnifico, which we do have those now. Sweet looking pen. Freaking looks like Count of Monte Cristo. I just love the way that pen looks. Not exactly like the most practical everyday carry pen for everyone. It's a marble pen with sterling silver engraved, cap and finial, but it looks freaking unreal. So I'm excited about that. And then the Visconti Torpedo as well. These are both limited editions. We talked about those in Right Time on Tuesday, I think it was. And so really interesting pens. And then Peniter, a little update on that. So I think we have word that those are going to start to come in soon in the next couple of weeks. I don't have like shipping tracking information to guarantee it yet, but that's what I'm told is they're like basically ready to start coming in. So that's pretty exciting because those have those, new nibs on them that Dante Del Vecchio has designed. And so that's pretty interesting. I'm excited to see how they pan out. I got to, we had our, the distributor who's going to be carrying Peniter, we had them visit us on Monday, and I got to write with the pen again. I'm just like, oh, dang, this thing feels so good. So I'm really pumped to kind of get that out there. Very wet nib, very smooth, very springy, a little bit of line variation to it. It's pretty cool. And then we did get wind of a pink TWSBI Eco that's going to be coming in the next couple of weeks. I don't have an exact date, but I think that is the next one that's going to be coming out. So that is pretty exciting because it's like a hot pink, and it looks pretty rad. So, I don't have an exact date on that yet either, but it's going to be coming soon. And then also got wind of a Pelikan M205 demonstrator, which is going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks as well. So it's looking to shape up to be a pretty interesting May. So that's kind of exciting, and I'm sure we'll have other things kind of sprinkled in there as well. So be on the lookout for all that. All right, questions for this week. Start out with some pen and writing ones because we actually have some of those this week that I chose. First one is from Darren Leonhart on Instagram. Triangular grip sections don't work well for me since I use a 4-fingered grip instead of a 3-fingered one. You are not alone. My wife has a 4-fingered grip. As such, I prefer larger and rounder sections instead. With that in mind, which pens have the largest round sections? Okay, this was tough because we don't have a facet on our site for grip diameter size. We have it as one of the technical specifications. So I thought this was a good question to kind of peg, and maybe we'll slice this one out too, just because there's not a super easy way to go through the website and see the exact specifications. You can use our Pen Plaza tool, which can be good to compare, different pen grips next to each other, but even still, it doesn't have the exact measurement on there, and you still have to somewhat know what you're looking for there. So I'm going to give you a list here based off, it's not a super exhaustive list, but I'm going to give you some of the ones kind of starting from biggest and going down from there. Basically everything that was kind of above 10 millimeters in diameter I felt was big. I had to kind of make the cutoff somewhere. There's a lot that are in like around that 10 millimeter mark that you could definitely consider big, but I went with like the top dozen, that are between like 10 and 14 millimeters. So all of those I would consider to be pretty big, and that's what I'm going to talk about here today. One of the biggest ones that I have is actually a pen that we don't carry because the company doesn't exist anymore, is Delta, the Dolce Vita Oversize. Now this is a fat pen, and the grip is huge on this thing. It has a number 8 size nib, which is a huge nib, but even still, it almost looks too small for the grip of this pen. It's enormous. It's like over 14 millimeters, going on up to 15 millimeters. It's just like one of the biggest grips of any pen that I've used. So that one definitely kind of tops my list. And there might be some like limited edition, like kind of obscure things out there that don't make my list here. I'm kind of sticking with ones that are somewhat more known. That way you can have, at least some idea of what's practical to look for. Kind of going down from there. So the Lamy Dialogue 3, which I actually don't have one in my collection. And I'm kind of like, why don't I have one? I have just about every other Lamy, but I have no Dialogue 3s. Anyway, so I don't have one to show you, but it's pretty big because it's a capless pen. It's just a twist retractable nib, and it's pretty big. It's about 13.6 millimeters, quite large. So it kind of tops the list of the things that we currently have on our site that are readily available, though we're out of stock of all of them right now. So, but we haven't discontinued them, they're out of stock. Another really big one is the Namiki Emperor. Not necessarily the most accessible or practical, so I think the least expensive one you can get is like $1,200, but still, it's got a huge grip. It's also, everything about that pen is huge. The nib is huge, the length is very long, very big pen, but very cool. It's almost like a small baseball bat. The Pilot Custom Urushi is up there as well. That's about 12.3 millimeters. Very, very much up there. What else have I got? The Jinhao 159. If you want to go a little bit, and this is like the only one near what I would consider like a starter pen or affordable pen, but this one is up there, and it is about 12 millimeters in diameter. So that one could be good, you know, for you. It'd be like $12 there. Mont Blanc 149. I'm jumping right back up to expensive pens. The Mont Blanc 149, which there is definitely some inspiration for the Jinhao 159 and the Mont Blanc 149, but you can get a similar large grip on that one. I forget exactly how big it is, and it tapers, but it's somewhere around the 12.5 to 13 millimeter mark. Let's see here, what else? I've got the Visconti Opera Master. This is about 11.25 millimeters, and that is pretty big as well. It tapers quite a bit. The way that we measure our grips on Goulet pens is we kind of measure it in a place that's somewhat logical. So it's like we try to go with kind of the thinner part of the grip where you would be most likely to probably grab it. Some taper and dip pretty hard. Some really taper a lot right at the end and then shoot out. So sometimes we have to make a judgment call. If it's a pen like the Lamy 2000 where it really curls a lot, or the Vanishing Point, we have to make a judgment call about where to measure it. But anyway, just in case you're wondering where we come up with those direct measurements. But the Opera Master is definitely a bigger, fatter grip of a pen. Very heavy one as well. The Pilot Vanishing Point, actually, which this one is kind of interesting because it's kind of like the Lamy Dialogue where it's like, well, the pen itself seems kind of thin, but that's because, you know, the grip, like where does the grip really start and the rest of the pen really begin, because it's all kind of one piece. So the Vanishing Point is a click retractable, and you know, where is the actual grip? If you grip right on the end, it's not going to seem super fat, but if you grip further up on it like I do, it's going to be closer to the, you know, above 11 millimeter mark, because you're kind of grabbing the body of the pen, which is basically also the grip. Let's see here, what else? The Conklin All-American is another one. That's around 11 millimeters. That one's pretty big. And I always compared this one to the Edison Collier, which the Edison Collier is a very large kind of bulbous pen, but the grip of the Collier tapers quite a bit in the middle. So in terms of like pens with a large grip, the Collier didn't even make my list here, which I was kind of surprised. But anyway, I think the Collier and this pen are somewhat similar, but this one has a larger grip, so go figure. Let's see here, what else? The Visconti Homo Sapiens, that one is around 11 millimeters as well. That one's got a bit of a taper to it too. The Monograppa Fortuna is just under 11 millimeters. The Lamy Ion is 10.6 millimeters, so that one's pretty big. That one's got a taper to it as well, so again, that's going to depend where your grip is. Pilot Custom 823 and the Conklin Classic kind of round out my list at around 10.5. So somewhere in there, I have no idea what kind of prices or anything like that you were looking for, but all of these have perfectly round grips without like extreme tapers that have pretty large grip sections. So hopefully something out of the list here that I've named for you today can be helpful to you on your quest for a large four-fingered grip pen. All right, next question, tinathetzu on Instagram. Lamy versus Faber-Castell versus the rest of the world. What brand would Brian Goulet recommend to a newbie wanting to start a collection while sticking to one brand? This is a tough one, and it's going to be a very kind of personal choice because there's a lot of reasons why some brands are more appealing than others to different people. So let me just kind of go off the bat saying that I might make my recommendation, but you could look at it and be like, no way, I want nothing to do with that brand, and that's totally fine. So I'm not trying to make any kind of a declarative statement here. I think it depends, especially if you're looking to really start a collection. I'm actually not the best person to ask that, mainly because I am more of an acquirer than I am a collector. You know, I tend to like to get a variety of pens and try and get a most diverse collection as possible. That's the approach that I take towards my collection. I am by most accounts not particularly inspired by trying to get one of everything with every variation. Some people are really into that, and that can be a really cool, kind of fun, exciting way to fill out your pen hobby, especially if you're into like hunting down pens on eBay or anything like that, is you can collect that weird, random, obscure one. I'm not like as specifically into the weird, random, obscureness aspect of it. If it's like, you know, Lamy is one of the brands that I've ended up kind of de facto collecting the most, just because I started to get all these different colors of Safaris and All-Stars and stuff, and I'm like, I guess I'm a Lamy collector now. Because now it's like whatever color comes out, I'm like, it just automatically goes into my drawer. But I'm not into like there was some Singapore special edition that was blue with a yellow clip or something weird like that. I don't know that ever even existed, but it's like a Leap Day Williams pen there for those of you 30 Rock fans. I think that there's some good pointers I can probably give you to maybe start you on your quest if that's what you're interested in. I think there's definitely two different routes that you can go as far as collecting goes, and I think it's good to keep this in mind as you have somewhat of your focus. You can either go modern, which is like new stuff that's coming out, think like TWSBI, Lamy to a degree, could be more like on the modern side of things, and then you could go vintage, which is like Esterbrook, Parker, Schaefer, Waterman, even Mont Blanc, stuff that's like 40 years and older. Even Pilot has a lot of stuff that's more in the vintage thing that you can collect. Any pen company that's been around for a while is going to have a lot of vintage stuff that you could collect. Pelican, so there's a lot of kind of vintage things that you could really get into. That is, there's no modern retailer that's going to have any of that stuff, just because you're into kind of the trader territory. Like TRADER, not TAIOR. I can't spell, but you know what I mean. Not trader, you trader, but like trading trader. So anyway, you're into hunting around on eBay and going to pen shows and stuff like that to try and round out collections with obscure, colors and cap, designs and things like that on some of these vintage pens. That can be really cool. I know a lot of people that have a really good time getting into stuff like that, and you can also get some really good deals because if they're vintage and people don't know what they have, you can pick up some pens for like pennies on the dollar for what they're actually worth. So there's that whole like Antiques Roadshow style discovery process that can be really fun. Not necessarily what everybody's into. Some people are more into like I want to get every new Lamy, TWSBI, whatever that comes out. An example of a modern collection would be like the Edison Nouveau Premier, or just like Edison in general. So it's like there's the seasonal premiere that we come out with. They come out with one every 3 months. We come out with one every 3 months, and you could just be like, yeah, these are cool. I'm gonna kind of collect all these. So that could be kind of fun. But it's really going to depend on kind of what takes your attention, what makes your heart beat, and what raises your blood pressure, right? That's really what it is. I think kind of I mentioned kind of by de facto that Lamy has become kind of, I guess, technically my biggest brand that I've collected. Part of it's because most of the pens are so affordable. So I've just kind of gotten a whole bunch of colors. I have probably 40 different Lamy pens. So I would consider that to be somewhat of a collection. But I think Pilot is also a really great one, especially if you're talking about one brand kind of over the life of your pen hobby. With Pilot, you can get into things like the Varsity and the Metropolitan and the Prera and the Plumix. The Parallel and the Plumix, and you can get some really diversity of experience kind of in the entry level, and then you can work your way up and you can get some things like Vanishing Points and E95S and the Custom 74, and then you can go even higher if you want to, and you can get into the 823, you can get into the Namiki products. So if you can, the Pilot Sterlings, and you can go and go and go, and you can get really a wide range of nib types, filling mechanisms, well, maybe not the most diverse filling mechanisms, but you can get a variety of them. You can get, a bunch of different colors and designs, and especially artwork once you get into the Maquis stuff. Could be really interesting. So I think that one could be a really good one. Pelican, I think, is also really good because they have so many different pens that go back years and years and years. Lots of different models and sizes and designs and colors and stuff like that. Mont Blanc, I think, is another one that you could get into. Those pens are much more expensive, and I especially think now the pens are much more expensive than they were, 20, 30 years ago, especially. I don't carry Mont Blanc, but I know a lot of people who collect them, and it's kind of their thing. So there's a lot to get into there, and they have a big fan following. So it could be really almost any brand. I think TWSBI is really hot for most people because they're so affordable. So yeah, that's kind of it. So I think for me it would be between like Pilot and Lamy. The hardest part is going to be kind of going backwards. If you're trying to collect stuff that's not around anymore, and it's harder to come by, it's going to be a lot more time. You may have to pay a lot if you're looking for some very, very specific thing to like round out. It's going to be like anything else you try to collect. When you start getting into it, it's going to be really fun and interesting, and then as you're almost like rounded out and filled it out as much as you want, it's going to get way harder and way more expensive to get like the final pieces to your puzzle that you're trying to do. So, but maybe that's part of the fun is you want to kind of seek out that unicorn pen out there that you don't even know if you could ever find. So just kind of go with your gut, whatever speaks to you. I would recommend if you don't have anything that jumps out at you immediately, go more the acquire route. Try a couple of different things, or maybe sell off the things you're not using as much. Cycle through some pens to see what you're really interested in. And then once you really latch on to the story of a certain thing, or once you find something that really is appealing to you, then you can start going into collection mode if that's where you really feel that you want to do it. But you know, as for me, I like having a diversity, so I haven't gone like whole hog into just collecting one brand. I think part of the fun is getting to learn and try a bunch of different things. So that's kind of where I'm at. Hopefully that helps you out some a little bit. All right, this next question is from minxyimp on Instagram. What minxyimp or minxyimp? Anyway. What is a good pen ink combo that can be used on mixed media or multiple art surfaces? For example, canvas, watercolor, painted surfaces, etc. Okay, so this one's kind of tough because I'm not a mixed media artist. So I'm going really off of kind of what I know from talking to people that use fountain pen ink for mixed media stuff. And it's pretty clear there's like a couple of really standout ink choices anyway. Pens a little less so. Pens tend to be a little more all over the place. Lamy comes up a lot because they're kind of just workhorse pens and you can change out the nibs pretty easily. Most people that I know tend to use extra fines or something on the finer side, maybe a stub depending on what they're trying to do. That can be helpful. Some people like to use Noodler's pens because they can put down a lot of ink. You can do flex and stuff like that, depending on how much you like to fiddle with your pens and what you're trying to do with them. They can be handy too. Pilot Parallel maybe if you're trying to do more like Gothic calligraphy kind of stuff. But it really depends on what you're doing with the pen. Most people I know that are using them for mixed media, they really just kind of like to draw some finer lines with it and use like waterproof ink that won't move so that whatever they wash over top of it, they know it's going to kind of stay. That, or I know people that do ink washing. So you're using a really saturated kind of deep ink color that you're then washing with water over top of it to pull out some of the secondary and tertiary colors out of that ink so that you can get some really interesting kind of color things happening in that. You know, I think specifically like Lay Reyes, she comes to mind, Laypod. She does some really cool artwork with some ink washing type stuff mixed in there. So her needs might be very different than somebody else who's maybe an architectural illustrator that's trying to have like just black lines or do stippling or something like that. So it's really going to depend on what you're trying to do, but pretty universally most of the artists that I know really gravitate towards platinum carbon black as an ink. That's just like kind of the go-to because it's a pigmented ink. So it's going to be more light fast and it does really well drying on top of surfaces, on top of paper and things like that. I don't know about canvas, how well it does on canvas, to be quite honest with you. I don't know that any fountain pen ink is going to be the best choice, but of all the fountain pen inks that I know, platinum carbon black would be your best choice just because it's going to dry on top of whatever your surface is and not have to absorb in like a dye-based ink would. And then let's see here, what else? The Diatramentus document inks are also rather popular, especially because there's a variety of colors with them. So if you're trying to do artwork and you want a permanent color, that can be really beneficial there. So those would be my recommendations. And then as far as the other inks for like, you know, the ink washing and ink pulling, that kind of thing, it depends. I know Private Reserve was pretty popular among some people. I don't sell that anymore. Noodlers, some of those. Some of the diamine colors, there can be some there that are pretty interesting. Really you just want a deep saturated color with lots of other interesting kind of secondary colors that come out of it. So it gets really individualized as to which colors work the best. And that's where testing and experimenting really kind of becomes key based on the artwork you're trying to do. So anyway, hopefully that helps you out somewhat. Maybe not the most specific thing. There's just no like one combo that I know every artist use. It's everybody's got a different preference. So hopefully that helps you out anyway. All right, I got an ink question here. This is from bicknunch on Instagram. Is there a good way to remove sparkles from sparkling ink? For example, I really like the color and sheen of Emerald of Chivor, but I don't desire the sparkling effect. Thank you. Honestly, this is an interesting question because I know that, you know, sparkling ink, shimmering ink, whatever you want to call it, is something that's really interesting and can look very appealing. But yeah, it's not necessarily for everybody. And once you start using it, you might be like, man, I really like the undertones on this color, but the sparkling is just not doing it for me. So you're thinking, if I already have the ink, can I just suck the sparkles out of this and then use the base color of the ink? I have never really heard of anyone doing this super successfully, but I've never really heard of that many people trying. And I was thinking about trying it ahead of time, and I just have not had the time. So I apologize. I'm taking this question. I meant to like, maybe I could try pulling it out and show you what it looks like. And I just flat out didn't get to. So, and I don't think realistically I'm going to get to. I'm not going to even be here next week. So I apologize for not being able to help you out practically in this area, but I can say that you can experiment. I think maybe if you're like, whatever, I want to throw this ink away anyway, okay, maybe you can try it. But otherwise, I don't know a surefire way that you can do that. Mainly because however you try to filter out those particles, you're probably going to absorb some other component of some of the dyes too. And I just don't know how much of that's going to come through or what it's going to really impact. So I'm thinking like if you have something like a coffee filter or some other like fine particulate filter, I don't know a lot of other types of filters besides a coffee filter that might be able to do the job. I'm sure there's something out there, some scientific, you know, cloth of some kind that is made for filtering fine media like that. But I don't know of any way to do it where it would only take the particles and not affect the ink at all. So if you use a coffee filter or whatever and you try and filter whatever ink through it, it's going to absorb some of that ink. As to whether or not that's going to impact the actual properties of the ink, the color, anything like that, I just don't know. Maybe it won't. Maybe it won't that much. Not with a whole bottle of ink, maybe. But I also don't know that you're going to be able to filter out all of the sparkles. Now, it's different if you're talking about sparkling ink, like a shimmering ink, versus a sheening ink. So if you have something like, you know, a Diamine Majestic Blue or an Organic Studio Nitrogen or something like that, that could get kind of interesting in the way of trying to filter out sheen. I don't think that's going to work because I think that's more of a chemical thing than it is a particulate, but I'm just not 100% sure. So it might be something interesting to try or experiment. If any of you have experience trying to de-shimmer your ink, I would love to hear about it in the comments. I just don't know that there is a surefire way to do it. The thing I can say is that there is usually a lot of good, really close alternatives to whatever the shimmering colors are, because I don't think that the shimmering colors are in the colors themselves are 100% unique. So I looked up some alternatives to Emerald of Chivor that maybe you could explore. Diatramentis Mint Turquoise, Monteverde California Teal, Robert Oster Peppermint, and Colorverse Gravity Wave might be some to look into. Now Emerald of Chivor is maybe a little bit darker than all these. California Teal might be the closest, but either way, they're all kind of darker green teals with a hint of red. That's kind of what you're going for, and all of these kind of hit on that a little bit. And I think that they could be ones that you can consider as possible alternatives if that's actually what you're looking for. So you can give that a try. Okay, I got a couple of business questions here. First one is from Nuchas on Twitter. I hope I said that right. Is it possible for Goulet pens to carry PenBBS pens? I got 2 recently and they are so smooth and fun to write with. I would buy more but would much rather buy from you. Experimenting on eBay is one thing, but I'd rather have the security of ordering from a real dealer. Interesting. So I've been getting asked a little bit about PenBBS. They're on my radar. They have some cool looking pens, I'll be quite honest with you. They seem really interesting. I haven't yet found like who the connection is over there, who's even making them, I don't know. PenBBS is a Chinese forum, kind of like the Fountain Pen Network, if you will, in China. And I guess some members of the forum or somebody who, I don't know if it's the person that runs the forum or where exactly it kind of came out of that group, but they came up with their own pens. So I don't know that they're selling or distributing outside of China at this point. I mean, I guess you can buy from China and have it shipped outside of the country, but I don't think that they have any distribution channel established outside of China. So I don't know that there is an avenue for me to carry them at this point, but it's something that I'm going to explore if I keep getting asked about it constantly, as I have been so far. Their pens are interesting. It doesn't seem like they're, it seems like they're somewhat unique designs and some materials that look familiar to me. Acrylics and things like that I've seen before in other models of pens, but are so I think it's their own thing. It doesn't appear to me at least that they're just like rebranding some other kind of Chinese pen. It seems like it's kind of unique, but I just don't know that much about kind of what they have going on. So I'm gonna keep looking out for kind of a point of contact to be had. The thing I will say is that sometimes with these newer manufacturers, and they do seem, I don't know whoever's actually manufacturing them, if they're new or what, sometimes what can happen is you can have a factory that doesn't necessarily have a lot of their own brands, but they might make pens or parts for a lot of other companies, and then they just kind of like outsource them, if you will. Those are called OEM manufacturers, original equipment manufacturers. And this happens in all kinds of different industries, not just pens. But you think about like, if Ford wants to build a car or a truck, right? Like they're not necessarily making every single part for every single car, right? Like they'll buy alternators from one company and tires from another company. So that's very common in manufacturing, and it happens in the pen world too. So you might have nibs that are made from one company, and you have the finials and pistons that are made from another, and you have all the acrylic material that's made from another, and then you kind of either bring pieces and parts in, you assemble and fit and make some of the pieces and make it all together into your own pen. That's very common. I don't know, I'm completely speculating about what PenBBS is actually doing, but it's possible that somebody from the forum could have designed some pens and sourced it out with an actual manufacturer that already existed. I could see that being a possibility. So I just don't know what their situation is, but either way, newer brands, newer manufacturers like that, they can't necessarily handle global volume. And when you have like something that comes up through a forum where it's basically like all these people that are super enthusiastic about the products that might be getting talked about, and then something is designed, that's like just pouring lighter fluid onto your charcoal grill, where it's like, whoa, it's like there's all this demand for something, but there's very little actual supply of it. So it seems like, oh, this pen exists, therefore anywhere in the world I should be able to buy it immediately. That's not necessarily the case. Like, when you think about how large some of these global pen manufacturers, like think about Lamy and Pilot and some of these that are like known and readily available, it takes years to get distribution set up across the world. It takes years to go through all the governmental regulation stuff and, trade organization or, customs and duties and like all these things to get distribution established in various countries across the world. It's actually a tremendous amount of work that you maybe just don't realize. So for the time being, it definitely makes the most sense to buy direct from China, just because they have a very efficient process over there. They have eBay and stuff like that. A lot of times they have e-packet, which is like a kind of a government subsidized shipping method, which is why you're like, how can they sell pens for a few dollars shipped for free from China? Well, it's subsidized. That's how they're doing it. Somebody actually has to pay for that, but it's just being subsidized because of trade agreements and stuff like that. So depending on what country you're in and where it's from and all that kind of stuff, that's why, I can't ship things for $2 from here to other places, because there's not the same kind of stuff set up for it to work going in that direction. So as a retailer here, if I was to go and buy in larger quantities from a country like China, I'm gonna actually pay a lot more than you will just buying one or two pens, because there's different trade agreements set up for buying in bulk and buying large things like that. So like I actually pay way more in shipping buying in bulk from a place like China than you do buying through an e-packet kind of thing, because that's kind of that's what they've got it set up over there. So stuff gets held up in customs, shipping prices are higher, there's duties and stuff. That all drives up the price. So by the time something might come in, you might be paying $15 for a pen direct from China, and it might be $40 by the time it would be in the US. And it's not that anybody's being greedy. It's just there's that much kind of stuff in the way by the time distribution actually gets set up. And a lot of that has to do with volume too. Like if you're buying direct from China like that, there's probably just not that many pens in the grand scheme of things that they're selling out of it like that way. If they wanted to really sell a ton, they would have to set up proper distribution channels and be able to move things through retailers and stuff. So blah, blah, blah. That's all boring behind the scenes logistical stuff that isn't particularly interesting to you. But for me, it's really interesting because I like that there's like new and exciting things kind of popping up all over the world. As far as like these kind of smaller, more independent manufacturers, I think it's really interesting to see that. It's really interesting to see it happen in the US, with companies like Edison and Karas Customs. It's really interesting to see that happen in other countries, whether it's PenBBS or Opus 88 or all these other, manufacturers where because of the internet and because of the enthusiasm of people in different forums and groups and websites and stuff like that, there can be products that come up and smaller manufacturers that never would have had a chance when back in the day when full-scale distribution was the only way to sell globally. Now there are some other ways to do it. So it's interesting. It puts me as a retailer in like a really interesting place because I see things that you all see on the internet. I'm like, oh, these pens look really appealing, and then I'll like contact them. Not specifically PenBBS, but I'm thinking about like other kind of smaller manufacturers and stuff where I'll see things on Kickstarter, and as soon as something's on Kickstarter, somebody's like, asking us like, oh, are you guys going to carry this? And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Just because a Kickstarter was listed doesn't mean the product even exists yet. Like it's just so much further out than you may even realize. Like for example, Karas Customs, when they came out, they did a Kickstarter, and it was like 3 years after they did their Kickstarter before they were ready to operate at the scale to be able to offer to any other additional retailers besides selling direct. So sometimes it takes a while. So they're on my radar, and I'm looking out for them as well as a lot of others. And that's usually at the point where I'm like, okay, let me get a couple, let me try them out, let me see what the buzz is about. Let me try to make contact with whoever's behind here. Okay, it might be too soon, but we'll kind of see how it goes if they're popular and they're vetted and they kind of get their stuff worked out and they're around for a little bit and then they want to expand. That's usually when I as a retailer or anyone else as a retailer would kind of step in and be able to help with distribution and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really interesting kind of like behind the scenes stuff that goes on from like a retailing and distribution side of things. But that just gives you a little bit of lifting of the curtain of how stuff usually goes when you're talking about like, I mean, if you really think about it, it's like, this one company in China starts selling this stuff and like within a month, globally, people are asking for this with their more or less local retailers. Like that's actually really kind of incredible when you think about the pace of business and how quickly things go like that. Whereas 20 years ago, it would have been a whole different ball game. So anyway, it's really, really interesting and it's fascinating for me to be kind of involved in that process to whatever degree that I am. And the thing I'll kind of leave you with is, I love getting asked about these new brands because, even though oftentimes I or my team can't really do much about it other than do some research and kind of have it on our radar, but we love getting asked about this stuff because frankly, that's how we stay sharp and that's how we get you guys what you're interested in. So when you ask us this kind of stuff and you're doing it a lot, it lets us know, okay, what is the potential demand for something like this? How much should we pursue this? Because especially when we're talking about some of these somewhat speculative and maybe smaller manufacturers, there might be a lot of excitement initially, and then it dies off completely once something happens and it just falls out of favor, or who knows. There's all kinds of things that can kind of happen along the way to maybe rock the boat a little bit, especially for a smaller manufacturer. So for us to be involved in any part of the process, it really just helps us to be knowledgeable of what's going on, to know what you all want, and ultimately that's kind of what we're here. So that just gives you a little bit of idea of kind of what's going on. And I will keep PenBBS on my radar. All right, last question for this week. This is from N. Vanderhoeven on Twitter. Can you talk a bit about your content strategy? It seems like Goulet is everywhere. How do you decide what to post where, and how many social networks do you handle yourself? Love what you do. Really appreciate all the educational content you put out about fountain pens. Thank you. Thank you very much. I and my team appreciate it very much. I just feel a little weird because like I kind of have to represent our team, and I'll explain a little bit here what's going on, but like I am just one among many here in this company at this point. I'm the face of a lot of these videos, but I'm definitely not the one doing all the work. So big shout out to my media team, Colin, Lydia, Jen, Margaret, Sarah, Whitney, and Andy are all working hard to basically do our content strategy, in addition to me and Rachel and others on our team who contribute on a little less regular of a basis, but really it's kind of anyone on our team could be involved in different parts of it, but they're the ones who it's like really in their job description to be doing that day to day. So our main focus on strategy has been educational content and engagement. That's been just kind of what we've been about from the very beginning. And a lot of that stems from the fact that when Rachel and I first got into this 9 years ago, we didn't know anything about fountain pens. We had to learn it all. So we spent a lot of time on forums and blogs and just engaged on Twitter and Facebook and wherever people were talking about pens, and we were just trying to learn. So the educational content was super important because we needed the education. And then once we had the education, we wanted to put education back out because we grabbed bits and pieces of this information. We worked with distributors and we worked with manufacturers and we experimented ourselves and learned a bunch of stuff. And then we thought, man, it would be really helpful if we put all of this into one nice little packaged place. And that's what our blog and our YouTube channel originally started out to be, was let's take all the education that's taken us months and months and months to learn in the very beginning, and let's put it together in some very simple videos that's the best knowledge that we would have liked to have just been handed right at the beginning, and then we will be able to share that with the world. So we've kind of been churning and burning and kept doing that to now the point we've got 1,450 videos or somewhere thereabouts. You know, we got 1,800 or so blog posts. We, of course, have our website with all the tools and everything else. It's all been a huge education focus. So that has largely been our content strategy. And that education focus and commitment to engagement with the community is essentially what guides us through every single strategic move that we look to do. Now, there's all these different social platforms that are out there. I could name at least a dozen or a dozen and a half of them where pen action is going on. So we can't do everything, but we are in a lot of different places. So right now, our main focus is on our own website, obviously, and our blog. We're on YouTube very actively, Instagram, Facebook, including our own private Facebook group, Goulet Nation, Twitter, and Pinterest, and then we have some activity here and there kind of on Reddit, which Rachel mainly is active on there, the Fountain Pen Network, which I'll dip into every now and then the Pen Addict Slack channel, which Rachel is on. I personally actually don't manage any of the Goulet Pens accounts day to day anymore. In the beginning, it was Rachel or I managing all of them, and then as we've grown and scaled, we have gotten help in those things because it was very difficult for us to manage all that day to day and come up with the content creation and run the rest of the business. So it's been one of the things where as we've grown, we've been able to get team members to help out more with that. So now that's what our media team is doing, is they're helping out with all of those. So I cannot take much credit for a lot of the day-to-day stuff that goes on all of our social media channels because we got a rockin' team that helps with that. So thank you all, team. You're doing great. And then, I do oversee the branding. So when you're talking about like, whenever we're looking to come out with stuff, I may not be involved in every single step of the execution, but I'm definitely responsible for kind of all of it as a whole. And if we put out some messaging or we put something out that just doesn't sound like us, or it's not really what we're trying to do, or we absolutely nail it, usually I'm involved at some point before we're publishing stuff. Margaret is overseeing that team and helps guide some of that, and I and Rachel really are pretty close in kind of the overall branding of things. But the team definitely is like pretty in sync with all that stuff, and they don't need like a whole lot of hand holding at this point because we got people that have been here for a little bit and have some experience. So that's super helpful. I'm definitely a content contributor, so especially with the videos and stuff like that, I'm pretty heavily involved in that. And I do respond to comments on most of our platforms as I'm able. It's difficult because there's a lot going on and I'm the CEO, so I have to do all the CEO things. And so I'll dip in here and there, especially on right now in Q&A. On YouTube comments, I'll try to dip in as I'm able, but man, you all comment so much. It's amazing. I love all the content, that engagement that we have on our platforms, but it's a lot to keep up with. I can't respond to everybody. That's where Colin helps out a lot. I'm not jumping onto the Goulet Pens Instagram quite as much because I have my own Instagram handle where I'm very active, so I'll usually respond as myself there instead of on Goulet Pens. And then kind of same with Facebook too. I have my own Facebook account and I'm on Goulet Nation and I'll post on there. So I'm involved a little less in there. I'll dip in every now and then when we need to do, administrative things and all that. And I can kind of backfill and cover things when I need to, but the team is pretty self-sufficient. They cover each other a lot too. So I'm not doing as much of that day to day as you may have originally thought. I don't really know. I do manage my own Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and then I've done other things like Periscope and Snapchat and stuff like that. Usually what I end up doing, I'm much more of a experimenter. I'm kind of like the one in the jungle with the machete kind of thing. So if there's like some new speculative platform, like I have a Musical.ly account, I've done Vine, I've done various other things where I've tried to kind of just taste and see like new platforms when it seems like there might be something that's brewing. I'll usually kind of dip in there and get to know the feel of it a little bit before we as the Goulet Pen Company brand like try to get super involved in. Like I have a Vero account and I have some of these other things. So it's interesting to see kind of how those things pan out over time. I got pretty big on Snapchat for about a year or so, and then that one kind of cooled off. Instagram basically just kind of copied a lot of the features they had, and we already had a big Instagram following, so that seemed to make more sense for us than keeping up there. Same with Periscope. Live came big on certain other platforms, so we haven't done as much there. But it's like we try to be everywhere. To sum up a little bit here, we try to be everywhere that good fountain pen conversation is going on. Whether pretty much everywhere that's happening on the internet, we'll kind of seek it out and try to be in the conversation. We don't try to force it, but if there's good places to be, and we're at the point now where we have kind of a reputation for doing that after, frankly, doing it for 9 years or so, that usually we'll be getting asked about other things that are going on. If there's some conversation that's starting to brew up in certain locations of the internet where it's like, hey, this new area seems really compelling, maybe we should consider going over there and commenting and kind of being involved. Usually you all will let us know if something is coming up like that. So that's always kind of interesting. Like I get asked about Twitch right now. Twitch is really big for gaming, and it could be that Twitch starts out itself just becoming really big on gaming, and then it might make a pivot and expand a little bit and become a real big player as a social media platform, like some of the other vloggers and stuff like that I've followed, like Casey Neistat is starting to get into Twitch a little bit. So it's like that's something that's on my radar a little bit, and maybe that I have a Twitch account in the near future. I don't know what I would do with it exactly at this point, because I frankly don't have a lot of time for video games, but I do enjoy a nice Mario Odyssey or Lego Worlds on the Switch every now and then, but it's a whole other thing to kind of get that going. So it's kind of wherever you all are in whatever makes sense and wherever conversation about pens is happening, that is our strategy, is to be involved in that. So for our media team, it ends up being, we're constantly kind of trying to keep up to date on what's going on. And, I get asked, I just had a visitor here today from, one of our major brands. And they were telling me that a lot of brick and mortar stores kind of look at what we do and they're kind of like, yeah, we need to do that. We just don't know how. And so I will speak directly to, I don't know how much of my audience here is maybe other retailers, or maybe you work in some other industry that's not fountain pen related specifically, but you can see something similar happening, because it's happening in a lot of industries here, not just fountain pens, but there is more of a move to go online than just brick and mortar, and advertising and media and all that is being shifted because of the internet, as if that was news to you. But really, it's not that complicated. Some of the technical things can get complicated, but you have Google, you have so many different avenues to learn this stuff now. A lot of it just is a mental thing. Like, you have to shift mentally and think, okay, it's not that it's like some big scary new technology or it's some big disruptive thing that's going to change everything about how business is done. Don't think about it that way. Think about it in terms of, I need to go where the attention is, right? So like, that's the way I look at it, is if everybody shifts away from Instagram tomorrow and goes over to Musical.ly, I need to go to Musical.ly and understand what's going on there in terms of my community, because that's where the attention is, and that's how I'm going to best serve my customer base. It's no different than if you had a brick and mortar store and you were in a mall and the mall got shut down because of some environmental regulation, and there was a new hot mall that was built on the other side of town and you needed to move over there because that's where all the foot traffic was. It's the same kind of thing. If all of the attention and all the traffic is going to a different location, you need to move locations if you want to be kind of a premier retailer. So it's the same kind of thing. So it's just happening virtually, so it might be a little harder to wrap your hands around. But if you want to steal or copy or emulate my strategy, go ahead. Like, I've ripped this off from Gary Vee and from other people that I've seen in other industries do the exact same thing. It's nothing that's a secret. It's really just a matter of where are people engaging in whatever it is that you're doing, and go there, learn it, and do it and engage with the community at wherever that is. There's the strategy. And do it for many, 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 many hours a day. Like anything else, it's not that there's one magical formula. You're not going to make one viral video that's going to make you a YouTube star. It's a grind. It's a matter of learning the ropes, putting in the time, putting in the work, and making sure that you know what you're doing. And then all of a sudden, 8 years later, you might be an overnight success. But you got to put in the work. It's also fun too. That's what I love about this whole pen thing, is it's a lot of fun. You get to meet really engaged, passionate people, and it's really a lot of fun. So find something you love, because that's the only way you're going to have the energy to put in the work that's needed to make it happen. All right, and we'll close out with that. Hope that was a comprehensive answer for you, Vanderhoeven. My question of the week for this week is kind of a twofold question. First one is, if money was no object, what one brand would you choose to collect? And if money was an object, what brand would you choose to collect? I'd love to hear about that. So go ahead and leave that in the comments. You can check out some of what I talked about here on gouletpens.com. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this is kind of a little Easter egg for the end, I guess, but most of you on YouTube are probably already aware of it. We recently hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we are doing a contest only for the next couple of days through May, through May, blah, 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 7th. So through May 7th of 2018, we are doing a contest where we're giving away a Visconti Opera Master Luna, $800 value. So you can check that out. Details on gouletpens.com/giveaways. It is the most expensive pen that we've ever given away. So I hope you enjoy that. Anyway, I hope you have a great weekend and a fantastic rest of your week. Thanks so much for watching, and right on.